session is about the ARM FDP toolchain. This is an implementation which has been done at STMicroelectronics and made open source. I will explain where it is and how it is defined. This work has been, the presentation will be decomposed like that. First, I will explain the motivation for doing an FDP toolchain. Then give some definitions. I will describe the so-called FDP ABI, which is significantly different from the ARM PIC ABI. And we will have some conclusion and perspective of evolution depending on the interest of the open source community. So the motivation is clearly it's possible to construct a Linux kernel on a MMUless core. You just set up the no MMU parameter in the menu config and you can build the kernel. Now you have to use microclipc as a userland C library. And you will have support for multi-threading, thread local storage. And in fact, we did this FDP toolchain exercise because we had a request from our two of our division in ST, the automotive division and the microcontroller division. However, when you use Linux system on a MMUless core, you have some possible issue. The first one is the memory footprint. You have to optimize your memory usage, and that's the reason why shared library is so important, because you can avoid duplication of code thanks to shared libraries. But the second issue you may have is fragmentation. And fragmentation may happen rapidly if your application is too dynamic, using too many processes of all sorts. After a while, your memory is quite fragmented and you get into problems. So the only way to cope with that is to mitigate the risk of fragmentation at application level. Either you frequently reboot your application or reset it, but you don't let the memory fragment. So if you look at a standard Linux system based on MMU, generally you have a virtual address space for the process, and it's possible for any process to maintain a global distance between the text segment of the process and the data segment of the process. Thanks to that, thanks to this property, the FDP ABI, not the FDP ABI, the ARM PIC ABI has been designed based on this very important assumption that there is this fixed distance between the data and the text segment. On the other hand, for MMUless core, all the processes share the physical address space, so you cannot make the same assumption about this constant distance between data and text segment. So you need a way to find from the code of your process where the data segment is located. That's the reason why we call it FDP ABI, is because it relies on a dedicated register to point at the memory location where the data segment has been loaded when you execute. And this fairly complicates, compared to the standard PIC ABI, this fairly complicates the mechanism for supporting shared library. So let's look at some definition. So the first one is PIC. What is PIC? PIC means position independent code. It's a property that allows to execute regardless of the load address in memory. without modification from the loader, compared to relocatable code, which can run anywhere, assuming you update some addresses in the data segment and in the text segment. So PIC, it's an important property to support shared library and other operation used, for instance, in security layers, like moving code anywhere in the memory from time to time. So PIC is, in fact, a sub-property of PIE. PIE is position independent executable. Generally, an executable is not 100% PIC. The main program is not PIC, but all the rest, all the load module, all the shared library are PIC. So PIE is a stronger property than PIC. So it's a bit more costly. It's more costly. And PIC differs from relocatable. I explained that. It requires no processing of the text segment to make it suitable for running at any location in memory. So, what are the PIC code requirements? The position independence imposes that all branches must be PC relative. And all reference to data must be also PC relative. So it means that we will use two indirection table, one for the code, the PLT, the so-called procedure linkage table, and we will use also another table for addressing global data from one module to another module. And this second table is called GOT, Global Offset Table. Now, if we look at how it works, I have summarized this on a small diagram. You have generally the kernel loads the application and the dynamic loader, which is part of the micro-CLIPC in our case. Then the dynamic loader locates all the load modules that are needed for running the application. There are some rules for finding the load modules based on naming convention. And then the dynamic loader updates all the indirection tables, the PLT and the GOT, the function description table. I didn't speak about this one, but I will do it in a few minutes. And then it gives control to the main startup file. Another important definition is what we call health visibility attribute. When you use dynamic loading and shared library, you can have symbol preemption. It means that one symbol defined in a given load module can be preempted by the same symbol, the same exact symbol in another load module. And to avoid this mechanism, there are additional attributes that you can use in GCC, for instance, with the minus attribute qualifier. And you can decide if a symbol is either visible by other load modules or preemptible. And depending on the two property, you have this definition of default, protected, hidden, internal, and so on. So if you want one of your global variable to be visible from the other load module but not preemptible, you will use, for instance, the protected attributes for this variable, and no preemption will occur on that variable. Okay? So now what is the FDP KBI? So in absence of MMU, we cannot rely on this assumption that the text and the data segment are at a fixed distance of each other. So we need a mechanism to find from the code where is the data segment. And this is this FD-PIC register. FD, I think, stands for function description PIC. I think so. I'm not sure 100%, but I think this is the way it was defined. So this FD-PIC register will always contain the address of the data segment of the currently executing load module. but the FDPIC is also complicated because you cannot assume that a function pointer will be a single pointer. You need also to keep for any function the address of the data segment for this function. A function is part of a load module, and the load module has a given data segment, and each function must execute with the assumption that the FDPIC register points at the data segment of the load module. So that's the reason why for each function we will use the function descriptor, and this function descriptor is made of two words. One word is the actual address of the code to execute for the function, and the second word is the address of the data segment, in fact of the GOT of the module of the function. Another consequence is that we will use the global offset table, but there is no change versus the PIC ABI. PIC ABI is also using global offset table for accessing global variable. And the FDPIC register is in fact used as a base register for accessing at the same time the global offset table, but also the function descriptor table, where we will find all this information about function visible by all modules in the application. The FDPIC register is implemented on R9, which is a platform-specific register in the ARM ABI, and it has to be treated as a caller-saved register. It means that before calling any function, you must save R9 value, calling the function, and when returning from the function, you have to restore the value of R9. Or you can do that by pushing on the stack or moving the register R9 to any callee save register. You have the list here. Next slide. So how the R9 register is used and materialized. In fact, compared to the PIC ABI, where the global offset table address is recomputed by a PC relative of instruction, load instruction, in our case, there are three ways of rematerializing the FDPIC register. First, it can be inherited if a function called another function in the same module. The two functions share the same FDPIC reference, so you can just inherit the value of R9. Or it can be set with a PLT entry, with a procedure linkage table entry. I will explain how it works. Or it can be reloaded from a function descriptor entry. So these are the three ways of reloading the FDPIC register. So what is a PLT? The PLT is the same, in fact, mechanism which is used in the ARM PIC ABI and in the ARM FDPIC ABI. A PLT entry, in fact, it's a small section of code that you must execute before calling a function, because you are transitioning from one load module to maybe another load module, and you need to load. You need to switch the R9 value, and this cannot be done in the prologue of the callee function. So you have to do this in this kind of transition between the caller and the callee. So in the PLT in a PLT entry, you will find a few instructions to set the FDPIC register, fetching the address of the function to call, and branching to it. And you will find also in the PLT entry a small piece of data. In fact, this is the offset of the function descriptor associated with the function. So I will give you an example on the next slide. So if we consider we are in a load module in, let's say, function bar, and we are trying to call function foo, you can see that if we move to the next slide, we can see a drawing of what happens. So you are in a load module lm1, and we are trying to call the function foo in the load module lm2. So the instruction to use is branch and link to foo of PLT. Foo of PLT is a special relocation that will be handled by the linker. And in fact, the branch foo to PLT will drive you to the PLT piece of code for foo. So in this PLT entry for foo, we will load the offset between R9 in the data segment and the entry of the function descriptor of foo. So if we go back to the previous sequence. So as you can see, we have a label L1 in the code that is in fact a word containing the offset between R9 and the entry of in the function description table of foo. So the first instruction loads this offset, got off of fundest of foo, add it to R9 in IP. IP is the intra-procedure call scratch register. This is a special register that you can use in this particular situation where you are in between two calls, between the callee and between the caller and the callee. So it's a special register defined in the ARM ABI to do that. So IP is loaded with the offset. You add R9, which is the current FDPIC of the caller module. You load the address of foo, which you want to branch to. You load the new value of the R9 for the callee module, and you branch. So if we go back to the next slide, so you can see that in the PLT entry of foo, we will load the address of foo from the function descriptor, the new value of GP, and then move to foo codes. And doing that, we have transition from the previous PC, the previous R9, to the next PC, the next R9. So we are now in the calling. So this is for a classical. So you can see that the FDPIC ABI requires a function descriptor in all load modules that call the function foo. Okay, so if you have, I don't know, 10 load modules that make calls to foo, each load module will have a function description for foo. And the dynamic loader will be updating this function descriptor when loading the module where foo sits. Okay, next slide. Now let's look at what happens when you access global data. Next slide. So we have a GOT table like in the PIC ABI. Next slide. And in fact, it's quite a little bit different from the standard PIC ABI. I have put in green the method used by the ARM PIC ABI. In fact, as we have a fixed offset between the text segment and the data segment, you can use this green offset to reload the start address of your data segment, the R9 value, in fact. In the case of the PIC ABI, you can reload it with the PC relative instruction, quite easily. That's the way the PIC ABI rematerialize in fact, the start address of the data segment. In the FDPIC ABI, we cannot rely on this green offset because this green offset is different from one load module to the other. So you cannot rely on it. So we use, in fact, the blue offset, which is the offset of the address of foo in the GOT table. And to load the foo value, can we go back one slide? So to load the foo's value, you have first to load the offset foo got, which is the offset from the start of the data segment up to the got entry where you have the address of foo. So this is the first instruction, LDR R2 L3. Then you add R9 to this value. This gives you the address of the entry in the got table. You load this value, you have now the address of foo, and you load foo, you have now the value of foo. So you need now, in the FDPIC ABI, you need 3 load instructions to load a variable which sits in somewhere in another module. Or, okay? And you have, when you compile this sequence, you have to make sure that somewhere, not too far, you can be after a branch instruction, you have to generate the offset dot word foo of got, and this is a special relocation that will be handled by the dynamic link.
It's balanced. I'm just intrigued. When I saw R9 coming up in the data segment, I should speak slower, right? When I saw I9 coming up in the data segment, I was thinking, well, that's a nice small constant that might allow us to fit it as an immediate for the third LDR. How often does that happen?
Sorry.
This is shown as a 3-step process.
Yeah.
I think because constant L3 is large enough that it won't fit as an immediate. I was just wondering how often it can be fit as an immediate.
Yeah.
Do we have any idea how often that can be shrunk down to 2 instructions because the value of L3 is small?
The problem you have is that the compiler can't reason about that. The linker is the only one that will be able to reason about that offset and possibly fill that in. So you could, in theory, what you end up doing is replacing one instruction with another.
Yeah. Has that not been, that was a historic limitation of the linker. I thought that had been withdrawn now. I thought you could do optimizing links.
Well, I don't think you can get away with anything but a knob. You can't change the layout of the code. For example, if you feed up R2, right? Yeah. If you feed up R2, you're not going to be able to reuse R2 elsewhere in the program. You're not going to
It will certainly hurt the register allocator, yeah.
It won't improve the register allocator just because you remove it.
Yep, okay, thank you.
So, but it may improve performance because you elided a load.
Well, it's a low constant.
It's a load constant, but yeah, I mean the other way of doing that is you could use the mock-w-mock-t instructions to construct that offset as well.
I thought the modern GNU linker had a compacting phase though, so you could actually lose the instruction. Am I wrong there?
So not in the BSP for AR study.
Oh, okay.
Can I do that? So this is the case where foo is a global variable which is preemptible and visible by all the other modules. Now there is a case where foo is a local variable in the sense it's not a stack variable, but it's a variable which has been allocated inside the load module where we are executing. So let's look at that. So bar, we are now loading bar, which is actually in the load module, because it is maybe a static variable, or it has been used with an attribute protected or hidden or internal. So now we know, the compiler knows that the variable has been allocated in the same data segment as the one R9 is pointing to right now. So in this case, we can simplify the sequence. So can we move one slide ahead? So you have your current instruction with the PC. So the PIC ABI would use this green offset to load the value of bar. In our case, we will use the blue offset. So we know that the bar is somewhere in the data segment, and we will load the offset from bar from the beginning of the data segment, from the beginning of the GOT. And bar is not in the GOT, but it's the same data segment as the GOT. So this relocation is named gotoff, and we will use it. Can we move back? In the sequence, we will define somewhere after the code, we'll define a dot word bar of gotoff. So this is the special relocation to materialize this offset I was talking about. So we load this offset in R3. We add the R9, the FDPIC register. We now have the address of bar, and we load bar. So it's a little bit optimized versus the previous sequence. So if we move back, we go on. So now a little bit more complicated example is how to take the address of a global function. It happens that you need to define a function address, and you want to load the address of a function to do whatever you want to do. So in the case of the FDPIC ABI, we won't load the address of the function code. We will load the address of the function descriptor that contains the address of the function and the value of R9 to load for this function to execute correctly. So this is done this way. Can we move one slide ahead? So you are in the LM1 load module. The PC is there. You have your data segment, and somewhere in the GOT, you will have an entry for the address of the function descriptor of foo, which is somewhere else. It's not in the not obligatory in this data segment. So it's maybe in the. In fact, it's not exactly this way it is implemented. But, if I have the question, I will explain. But if I don't have the question, I won't explain. Okay. Let's assume that the function descriptor of foo is in the data segment of the load module where foo code is defined. Let's assume that. So we need an indirect pointer to the descriptor of foo in the right load module, data segment of the right load module. And we will load, now we can come back to the, and now the sequence is the following. We load the offset L3, which is another specific relocation, which is foo, the gotoff, the fundes. This relocation will ask the linker, in fact, to generate a function descriptor for foo and to update it. It will, at the dynamic linker, the static linker will update this word with the correct offset of foo in the GOT of the current load module. So we load this offset in R3. We add R9 to R3, and this give us the address of the function descriptor of foo somewhere in memory, and we keep that as the descriptor of as a function pointer. Yeah.
So do all.
Yeah.
He finds the question.
So one of the things in the standard PIC ABI is that all addresses of function pointers are essentially the addresses of the one of the PLT stubs for that function. What happens with in FDPIC?
Sorry?
So by this description, it seems do all addresses of foo compare? How do they compare?
He finds a question to ask. Okay. Yeah, you have to respect the C semantic, and in the C semantic, a function has a single address.
Correct.
And if we go, and in fact, this drawing is a little bit simplified. In fact, we are not, when we retrieve the address of the foo descriptor, we are not going to find it in the function descriptor of the load module of foo, but it will be allocated in the heap only once.
Okay.
That's the reason. Doing that, we guarantee that the address of foo is unique for all the modules who try to load the address of foo.
Okay. That answers my question. Thank you.
Good.
Sorry, I've been doing pick and got for a long time now.
Okay. But this, I simplify the drawing to not to confuse everything, but it's not allocated in this case. There is only one function descriptor for foo in memory, only one, and it is in the heap.
Okay. And who takes care of allocating that?
It's a dynamic.
It's the dynamic loader.
Yeah.
And when it processes the relocation.
And the second time he has to, let's say, and he won't do it twice because he knows
it has been resolved.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And it works even with lazy dynamic linking, and it works with lazy resolution of functions as well. Does
Yes.
it? Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So let's move a little bit further. Now, if we take the address of a local function, local in the sense the function is in the same load module as the one we are executing currently. In this case, it's a little bit simplified because we can rely on a pure PC relative instruction. So we do this like that. If you move one slide ahead. So in this case, we are in the function. Where are we? We are in the function foo, let's say, and we are trying to load the address of bar. So in this case, we have a function descriptor for bar, and we need also an entry in the GOT where you will find the address of the function descriptor of bar, and you need the offset, another relocation, which is called got of fundesk, which is the offset from the GOT, from the start of the GOT to the fundesk of bar. And if we move back one slide, and to load this address, you just do you load the offset L3, which is relocated with got of fundesk. You add R9 to R0, and you got the address of the function descriptor of bar. Now, when you want to use a function address, dereferencing a function address, can you move another one? So, in the usual pick sequence, you do branch and link my function. My function is this is a direct call in the case of pick and direct call in the case of FDPIC. So this is something I already explained. The only difference is that you have to save R9 and restore R9 before and after the call. Next slide. So when you want to do an indirect function call, we assume that R0, in this case, in the pick sequence, R0 contains the address of the function to call. So in this case, you just use the BLX R0 instruction. In the case of FDPIC, it's a bit more complicated. You have to, since you have the address of a function descriptor under the hand, at hand, you have to load the function address by first load instruction. You have to save R9, in this case in the R4 register. You have to load the R9 value for the new module you are going to enter, the new FDPIC value for this module. You do the branch and link instruction for register R3, and then you restore, when returning, you restore the FDPIC register. Next slide. So, I gave you some insight on the internal mechanism of FDPIC. You can see that in terms of calling convention, parameter passing convention, these are the same as the PIC ABI. But in terms of calling convention, there are some important difference, and the two ABIs are incompatible. You cannot mix PIC and FDPIC code. the GOT address must be always materialized in R9 upon function entry. This is a strong assumption. And the function pointer are made of 2 words.
Sorry. So if you're saving and restoring R9, surely you should be able to call between fdpic and pic code.
Yeah, but you have the problem of the function representation, function pointer representation.
The representation is what kills the ABI.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dumb question.
So it
Sorry.
doesn't work.
Yeah.
Next slide. So now I move to the FDPIC toolchain, the status today. So this work has been has to be credited to Michael Guéné, who is working in the ST compiler team, who did everything. He did the kernel patches, the work in the compiler, the work in the binutils, the work in QEMU also, because we have a QEMU working with FDPIC. And the whole credit is for Michael, who did this implementation and submitted it and made it open source. So the FDPIC toolchain is available on both Cortex-R and Cortex-M core. For your information, this FDPIC toolchain and ABI already existed for Blackfin processor and FRV processor, and also for a processor of a French company called Calray. So in ST we have implemented this FDPIC ABI in the GNU toolchain, the ARM GNU toolchain, for V7R and V7M, both in firm and ARM mode. So it's suitable for a Linux MMUless execution environment. It compiles the kernel. I will explain how. It supports shared library and dynamically linked binaries. It also supports fully static binaries. So it gives you access to the full functionality of Linux on MMUless core, including shared library and dynamic loading. Michael also implemented the necessary patch to GDB to follow call to load modules. So it also contributed to the GDB patches. And we can execute, in fact, we can validate this toolset and validate application compiled with the FDPIC toolchain. We have we could build a complete Linux distribution based on Buildroot and provide a complete rootfs with the FDPIC binaries. And thanks to proot and QEMU, you can execute as if you were on the target system. You can execute your code, your ARM code, on your workstation using the proot container and QEMU. Next slide. So you have one or two options. Minus FDPIC, you compile in FDPIC mode. Minus no FDPIC, you compile in no FDPIC mode. So the kernel has to be compiled in this no FDPIC mode. You can mix FDPIC and you can mix static and dynamic objects using the following syntax. You can also use a static flag to compile everything in static mode. So it's a flag which is recognized by the linker. One thing which I didn't mention is that in the FDPIC ABI, it's possible to do lazy binding. It means that instead of the dynamic loader, instead of immediately trying to solve all the symbols of a load module, he puts a reference to itself, which means that the first time the symbol will be referenced by a load module, instead of executing the function of the load module, you will execute into the dynamic linker that will finalize the symbol resolution and all the stuff the linker has to do. So doing that, you save lots of time at load time, because you don't completely resolve all the symbol of your load module. But we didn't implement it in the case of ARM, because we have a rest condition. We have a rest condition, yes?
So we had exactly the same problem in glibc with TLS desk, and on ARM and AR64 we solved it by putting out the necessary barriers or using the necessary acquire release instructions.
You have the same issue of atomicity of 64?
We had atomicity not of 64-bit loads, but we had issue of a race condition.
Yeah, but in this case it's maybe different, because function descriptor are two words.
Right. So you do have
to load them both at the same time, because in multi-threaded environment you may end up in a situation where you load the first word, not the second word, and you are now halfway.
Yeah, but you do also have the LDREX-D and STREX-D instructions that could help with some of this
that's
thing.
very good information.
So I think that is something we should talk about afterwards, but for a first cut, disabling lazy binding is probably okay.
So it's something that is on our
it can be an
list.
enhancement.
Okay.
Yeah.
To-do list. Next slide.
Can I check that?
So it doesn't.
Can I check my computer slide? It'll make it easy for Christian to answer. So with that statement, no change required to Linux application build systems. It's a different option. I don't understand how you can have this FDPIC and... Oh, sorry, implicit. I hadn't read that, sorry. So the default will be to make FDPIC binaries so that a standard system runs. Yeah, okay, so I misread that. Thank you.
You have no question.
I don't need more now.
Okay. Next slide. So just to clarify, Michael didn't implement the lazy binding for the time being. But it works. Okay. It's just a little bit slower when you. So what is the maturity of this tool set? So it's in production in the ST Automotive division for one application. It's not yet in production for Cortex M4, but it has the same maturity, because we build the same Linux distribution with it, and we have the same validation system. We have a very large validation system that we use. Both toolchain builds a complete root file system with build root. We can run, we can boot Linux and run BuzzyBox and MPlayer thanks to this toolset. And we, as I explained, we have this possibility to, let's say, validate application on a workstation using PRoot and QEMU, thanks to available rootfs built in FDPIC mode. Next slide. So this is a description of the various components that were modified, patched. It's based today the kernel. Maxime worked on the kernel. It's based on 3.10 and 3.12.
Yeah, but I made it work on 4.2.
And it works on 4.2. So you have here the different patches that are necessary in the kernel. First, you need to recognize an FDPIC L file. We have added one single bit in the E flag descriptor of the ELF information to recognize that it's an FDPIC register. This is at the same place where you specify small enums versus big enums, hard float versus soft float, all the ABI tags which allow the linker to avoid mixture of object files. We reuse one bit in this E flag to to recognize an FDPIC ELF binary file.
Okay.
And we have to discuss with ARM if we can get this bit forever.
Right. I think that would be a good start. The other question I had was, will attributes will allow you to prevent intermixing object files compiled for the different APIs?
Yeah.
Do you have something that prevents a shared library that's built for Linux from being loaded in the dynamic linker?
I don't know. I have to ask Mikhail that.
Okay. That may be something
Do you
that's...
know, Yvon? No. We have to ask. But I cannot tell.
I think that's a nice to have feature, but because this is, we have a lot of other shared libraries and it's all basic.
Yeah, you're right. It's a good point. Yeah.
There's usually a bit in the eFlags field. There's an EF underbar ARM underbar pick and an EF underbar ARM underbar FB pick.
Is it?
It has already been used by Blackfin.
Yes, yes, that may be enough to catch this particularly.
But in fact, we did the same thing as the Blackfin guys.
Right, and okay. There are some discrepancies in somebody, I think it's Rich Felter, has been finding interesting discrepancies between the SH, FDPIC or the Blackfin. All the FDPIC implementations don't match with the ADI document or something like that. So I think that's also that is another point we need to consider.
Documentation, you mean?
In documentation as well as we have to document what decisions have been made with respect to the ARM FDPIC.
Okay, good point. So the various things that you have to consider in the kernel. First, you have to recognize an FDPIC ELF file. Second, in ptrace, you are concerned by what? By function descriptor, load map service and addresses of the data and code segments. This has to be updated. And now, since function pointers are 2 words, it's visible now in signal handlers. So you have to adapt the kernel when you have to handle signal handlers because of the function descriptor, which are 2 words. And we have some patch also for the support of Futex for MMULS system. With regard to GCC, we are on GCC 4.7.3. There is a large patch for FDP code generation. Large patch, not so large, but not a single one, I would say. And we have a prototype on GCC 4.8, but it's not in production yet. Binutils, this is where we have the most important patch in the BFD of the linker. We have also some patch to handle dynamic object and FDPIC awareness in GDB. Patch in the micro-CLibC. We are based on the latest known version of micro-CLibC, which is April 2012. And we have also some patch in QEMU, because QEMU has also to cope with the ELF file when loading the binary. Next slide. So that's it. I have now one slide on what to do next. So the code is available on GitHub at this address. So you can do it. You can download it. There is a full recipe to build everything. The makefile, the configure, make, and install the FDPIC toolset and the kernel. Not the kernel, but to apply the patch to a kernel. Unfortunately, we have right now we have 2 different branches for Cortex-M and Cortex-R. And I think we are now depending on the interest of the community, we can do the following. If there are a strong interest, what I propose to do is to upstream the kernel patch, try to upstream the kernel patches. we should merge the definition, the source modification for Cortex-R and Cortex-M in GCC, Binutils, GDB, microCLC, QEMU, and parameterize the machine dependencies to have a single source definition. It might be useful to merge the binary toolchain using the multilib mechanism to handle the two type of Cortex-M and R, but this is optional. We had also the idea of investigating another libc because microCLC is a bit out of, let's say, of maintenance right now. So we think of looking at MASL-C, which is an alternate library for embedded Linux. Would it be possible to fix the lazy binding of many? I think so.
It's worth investigating
Yeah.
on those lines.
So that's the reason why I put a question mark. And then, if we want to upstream all of that, we should upgrade to fresher, to the current version of GCC Binutils before trying to upstream.
It should be on trunk.
It should be?
It should be on trunk.
Yeah. So we have to upgrade first to the trunk. And if there is no big interest community enough to get upstream approval, we propose to keep this development on GitHub and share the contribution and maintenance with any interest users. That's it. So I put some reference for. So if you have any question. Or any interest in FDPIC toolset.
Yeah, certainly interested, yes.
Sorry?
Certainly interested, yes.
Okay. So thank you very much. No question? No? Okay. Thank you very much.